Welcome, bienvenue au Festival Fantasia. Welcome to the Fantasia International Film Festival. It is my absolute pleasure and privilege to be here tonight presenting The Five Rules of Success, one of my favorite films of the year, a movie that absolutely touched my soul. It's potent, it's angry, and captures the spirit of American ingenuity and injustice. I saw this movie months ago and it totally blew my mind. I'm so happy that we're able to be here, even remotely, to be able to talk about the movie and to talk to some of the people involved. I'm hoping that they appear back on camera momentarily, and I'll introduce everyone. There we have Orson. We have Orson, the writer, director, cinematographer, editor, or is that an assumption?
Three quarters. Jeff Katz was my partner in crime on that, but yeah.
So half an editor, but is still more than 99% of most people's work on a movie. It's insane. So impressed. So thank you for being here. I have Isidora Goreshter, who was one of the performers, one of the actresses who scared the shit out of me. Amazing performance. I loved it. And of course we have Santiago Segura, who is the star. An absolutely a breakout performance. Absolutely incredible. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm so excited. I just want to let the audience know that if they're watching on Zoom, they can ask me questions, and hopefully after we go through some preliminaries, I'll get to as many of them as possible. Unfortunately, if you're listening on YouTube, I might not be able to see them because I can't switch around, but feel free to join the Zoom call. So I kind of want to just get to the beginning. Orson, I was wondering if you could kind of explain the genesis of this project and why you wrote it and how it came to be.
It's kind of interesting because I had actually a couple of years before started a film about a young man who gets out of prison and kind of has a hard time struggling with acclimating back into the world. It was based off of, but I only written very little of it, kind of sketched it out, always something I wanted to do. It was based off of partially true stories of a friend of mine I lived in Hollywood for over 10 years. And my neighbor is this, and he was a very good friend. His name is Pharaoh. He had kind of been in and out of prison. Super cool dude, super young, wanted to be a boxer, all this very charismatic guy. And he would tell me stories because he would go in and out over our friendship about what it was like in there and coming back. And, he would come back and he'd have a kid. And what's up, RGS?
Yeah.
How goes it?
Welcome.
Oh. Here, yeah, you mute. And so then, and so he would tell me what that was like. So I was very interested in this and kind of hearing the honest trials and tribulations of a young man who, to me, seemed like the whole world should be in front of him, and how he'd kind of, there's, a parole violation here or something there, and his whole life would be turned over again. So that was kind of the first person that gave me an inside look as just a friend, where I saw him so differently than kind of the way he was treated by society. And then Christian, who was a friend I had already worked with on another film, kind of was like, yo, I want to do a movie, let's do something crazy. I want to do something where we can do whatever we want. I think I have a friend that we can go to who's super cool that would help us finance it. And we, no holds barred, we can just do our thing. And he had these ideas of kind of a person who had we were kicking around ideas, and I was like, I have this, I have that. And he's like, what about a person who kind of has these rules that he makes for himself? And the rules were from Christian, those 5 rules. So, and he kind of creates this way to live life, and we synthesized them and started writing. And we started in October of 2018, and we were shooting by January 2019. So Christian really brought it together, brought this one side and I brought this other side, and we just kind of went full on into it because we had no one telling us what to do. We were just a couple, he really allowed me in a position where it's you can do whatever you want, and the more radical, the more extreme, the more artistic, the better. And so that's where we started, and then all kind of came together. That Christian met you Santiago from a totally different film. You would never think that these two things would ever come together. and Christian's known Izzy for a long time, and then I brought Johnny, and it was all Roger, who I'd already worked with. Like we just brought people from our lives, from our or our family, like kind of close to us, and brought them together. John Sklaroff, who plays a Vaki, and obviously my mom's in it for a second. So yeah, very organic. I don't know if I'll ever get to do something that organic again, but it was super beautiful process how it all kind of just came together.
And I mean, leading up to kind of going into production, which everything seems so quick. In the preparation, when you're working, were you working ever at any point with rehearsals, or like how was the process like once the cast kind of came together?
I mean, there was no, like, Santiago and I talked a ton, and we just like, I always loved the casting story of Santiago, but like, I'll let him kind of go into that. But we spent a lot of time talking. I gave him a lot of reading material, gave him a lot of real life, because like I work off books and stuff that I love, and that's how I learn, and films. But with a lot of our other cast, I mean, everyone, we just kind of had a conversation and let everyone kind of bring their own ideas and their own world and have an open space for dialogue. So it wasn't there was no rehearsals between the other cast and Santiago. Really only Santiago and I were rehearsing together. And it was more rehearsal, it was more research. It wasn't like, I mean, just personally, like when I make a film, I don't really want to be like, let's do the scene. Like, cause there's no reason to perform it. Like I want to work it out, you know?
Yeah, and I was wondering if maybe because you all have such fully formed characters, you could kind of talk about from your point of view as an actor reading the script and kind of building the character that you're playing and how that worked within the scope of the film.
Well, I know for me personally, there were like things that I could relate to. Like I had worked a ton of restaurant jobs already. I was actually working at a fast food place like when I got this job, and then kind of held on to it during, because I was like, this actually is going to inform the work. And then there were other things that I needed to do a ton of research for, and Orson was kind of like my battle buddy and all of that, and we would just talk every day. And yeah, I just dove into it as hard as I could for the time that I had. And then by the time we actually started shooting, we were moving so quickly that all I could really do was try to be present. And luckily we got such a good cast for what a small scale this movie was, that like you could just show up, be present, like listen to the people you were opposite of, and you knew you were going to get something for the day, you know? So yeah, we got lucky in that sense that like everyone who came on was committed to it.
Yeah, it felt really collaborative. I feel like on the day, I mean, Orson has this beautiful script, but it almost kind of worked like a rubric, and we worked around the words. And if something wasn't working, it felt very, communal and collaborative. And the rehearsal process was almost filmed as takes, which I think that's kind of sometimes when the most organic work comes out anyways. And I know, Orson, you love to film the rehearsals anyway. And so I'm pretty sure a lot of our takes that got into the movie were just me and Santiago rehearsing.
That's really incredible. I don't know if Roger, if you would mute yourself, maybe you could explain too, or.
Roger, are you muted? I like it. Just silent. Roger.
I know.
Yeah, it's a silent observer. Oh, there we go. Hi.
Hello, I'm unmuted. Thank you very much for having me. Orson, congratulations once again on a tremendous achievement. And it's great to be with you again for the second time. It's always wonderful to go into a comfort zone, to enter into an environment of trust, of challenge, and of course, to be able to be free to improvise, which is the kind of experience that I've had with Orson heretofore, to be able to take his great script as a blueprint and jump off of the script and hopefully land safely somewhere. I found myself in a very strange basement in Koreatown, which seemed to be the perfect environment, the perfect locale, the perfect location to achieve what we were trying to achieve, which I think was a very kind of passive aggressive relationship amongst people who had tremendous need and found different ways of fulfilling those needs. And that for me was a great way of entering into this. And also I got to work with what I think was a kind of South African accent. And
I love it.
And that was something that was encouraged, either fortunately or unfortunately. But I thought that since I had played kind of an archetypal American heavy in the previous film, Queen of Hollywood Boulevard, that I would try to bring a kind of internationalist flair to what I was doing. So I'm very appreciative for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, one of the things about the 5 Rules of Success that really struck me is Los Angeles. It's a cliche, but it doesn't play itself. It's super rare that you see a film that Los Angeles is one of its stars. And this movie, like, I've never been to LA, but it feels so Los Angeles. And I could feel the way that you speak about the city, Orson. You have such strong feelings about your environment in the city. Could you talk a little bit about how you approached shooting Los Angeles, finding the locations, and how your relationship to the city kind of informed the way that you made the film?
I think LA and I have a very abusive relationship with each other, where I keep trying to get away, including in this film. When I first said I was going to do this film, I was like, I don't want it to feel like LA. I want it to feel like anywhere USA. And then, like, as soon as I started writing it, it was suddenly, I was like back in just the bowels of Los Angeles, because I love this place. It's a crazy, I live in the middle of Hollywood. I love it every day. I go out and take photos on Hollywood Boulevard. It is a clash of cultures like nowhere else. And I love that LA itself has kind of been demonized by pop culture and the art world even for so long, and everything, that it was this kind of like, oh, glossy plastic surgery place. But you embrace all that and you get this beautiful Lynchian John Waters bubble. And now everyone's looking back at LA as this like amazing art haven, right? Of Ed Ruscha and Hopper and everyone that over the years, and Baldessari, and like really seeing that LA there was a lot going on here. It was just happening. It's so big and sprawling. I've been obsessed. Like, there's a book, Mike Davis, City of Courts, that really, when I was younger, I read, and it summed up this Los Angeles. There's a great chapter on it called Sunshine Noir. And I've just been obsessed. When we made Queen of Hollywood Boulevard, obviously, like, that film was based around my love of LA and these characters that I had photographed for years. And so kind of at first I strayed away from LA, and then I just fully embraced it in this film because there's so many cultures here. And I also thought of it as this kind of, I thought of X as this alien almost, right? Coming from another planet, and that planet is prison. And he gets thrown into LA as your that's where you go because that's the land of dreams, right? But if you live in LA, you see a lot of, we have the highest homeless population in the country, and obviously we're having major issues with our police department and sheriff's department here and local politics, and like there's a lot going on in this city. It's not the dream. It's not Hollywood. It's a lot more than that. So I wanted to show what it was like, and also like with the food scene and that type of stuff. That's why I wanted to do stuff with food. I love food. I think food is like cinema, food is a way of communicating between boundaries and borders. And I think LA has an amazing assortment, probably the best, if I say so, in the world, of different cuisines and ethnicities that you can indulge in and learn about and break down barriers. So I wanted this character that wanted to do that. He strove, and LA is the place to do that. And it's amazing because I know, Izzy, you're from Long Beach originally, like, right? You spent most of your life in Long Beach. And Roger, you're obviously, were you born and raised in LA or in the Bay and then came down here?
Yeah, I was born in Berkeley, but I grew up in LA, in Crenshaw District, and I've lived for many years in Echo Park, which is where I am right now.
Totally. And Santiago came from Maryland?
Yeah,
right?
I grew up in Maryland, the East Coast, and then lived in Ohio for a little while, like Cincinnati, and then had been out here for a few years, but had also like been living in Hollywood. And I don't know, not to go on a tangent, but like I remember seeing Los Angeles represented in shows like Entourage, and it's like one view of the city, and then the way you shot Queen or this, it's a very different look at Los Angeles. And like, I don't know, I liked that kind of gritty approach to it. And then I liked that you found restaurants that weren't necessarily, I don't know, they were more like hole in the walls that you kind of had to seek out and find. And I liked that you were able to kind of capture that stuff in the movie, you know?
LA gets a bad rap in general, and all Hollywood is, I think, victim to that as well. It's I grew up in Long Beach and LA, and I've lived in Echo Park and Silver Lake. I've lived in Koreatown. I've lived all over LA. And Orson, I loved that LA was, kind of like our supplementary character, because nobody shoots LA realistically. It's so glossy. There's that, have you seen LA Originals, Orson?
Yeah.
It's so good. Like, that to me is LA.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that's to me our LA culture, and it's so rich in its history and its art and its creativity, and nobody ever really depicts that, especially in mainstream media. We get, like Santiago, you said, the Entourage version, and it's really disappointing because LA has a lot to offer in terms of a lifestyle. It's not Hollywood.
And it's not even accurate when you watch those shows. It's like a shot of the PCH, you know what I mean? Or like some of those beach communities, and then like the Hollywood sign, but it's not, it's not really an accurate representation of the city. So yeah, I like that we captured some of that.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. And also, just as a cinema lover, I love the history of LA films, of like, going back to, like Crimson Kimono by Sam Fuller, to Heat, to, there's tons in between, to Live and Die in LA. I'm just joking my head, but just that kind of like rich history of Los Angeles films, and mainly crime films. I love that. And I love to try to continue on some way that lineage and evolve that, because I think it's its own niche genre in our art form. And yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I found super interesting, I think the first time we spoke, is that you said that you were also inspired by Sono's Hazard, which was his American film. It's if for those unaware, a Japanese filmmaker who does these really gonzo movies. A lot of it is really handheld, really intimate. And I would love if you could kind of talk a little bit about that, because I also think it has that relationship too of an alien type of situation where you have an outsider coming in to see America or from a different point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I love Sono as a filmmaker. Guilty by Romance, Love Exposure. I mean, Tokyo Vampire Hotel, the series on Amazon, like it's just a boundary pusher, and I love him. And it's scary that we even almost lost him in January because he had a heart attack. So like, he's a phenomenon. I love Tokyo Tribe. Just gonna fanboy out. I love him. But Hazard, yeah, it's about, a group of young men from Japan who come to New York, and they're totally, it's like this blitzkrieg of America hits them, and they just kind of like take it upon themselves. And I know he got a lot of criticism for that film because they said, he seems like he's leaning into these American cliches of race or anger or like whatever. And I'm like, America is a cliche. Like, come on, look at this place. Like, that's what I love about it, is that like there's things about America that are so American, they feel like they're phony, but they're not. It's really America. So I love when he embraces that in that movie as a filmmaker and with his characters. And I saw that kind of stylistic, kind of organized like entropy, like that chaos that he created that they were feeling. I wanted to capture for this and be able to show that through a character who was a little more passive than active. As those characters kind of like really embrace the buffoonery. And I love that. But in this case, he wasn't, X was much more serious about his future than that. He wouldn't be so haphazard. But yes, that I love that film and I love that take on America. I watched it right as I was starting to write this movie, and I was like, oh wow! With Reese, our associate producer and my AD, and I don't know, we did like 10 jobs, line producer, whatever. Reese is my right hand man. And he, we watched this film, and I was like, yo, this is kind of the vibe. Like, this is it. Like, this is how I want to walk out of this film the same way I walked out of watching Hazard. And just push a little boundaries, but do it in a responsible way.
And I mean, one of the things as well is the movie is, it's political in very obvious ways, but it's also not in a very classical Hollywood like crash movie. This is a social movie. It is a lot more poignant because it's from situational things. No offense to people like that other movie. But I would love if you could kind of talk about like the movie's evolution, because obviously the movie was made well before 2020, or not well before, but before 2020 arrived in terms of the pandemic. And then we have these incredibly huge, expansive and moving social movements that are kind of happening right now. And the film feels so of the moment, even though it wasn't calculated to be. I would love if you could kind of talk a bit about the context and how maybe the situation of the world right now has even transformed your relationship to the film. This is for Orson, but everyone, if you feel welcome to have an input too. Yeah.
Well, I'll start because everyone here, to be honest, this was my, like, I wasn't necessarily trying to make a social justice film per se. I was trying to just take on a character, and the world's been like this for a long time. We've been dealing with these things, and it's kind of just been part of what I've read and the way I see the world. And I call it this and Queen, and I still have a third one I want to do, but I call it part of my capitalism trilogy, because I see it all as an effect and consequence of capitalism, which also creates a lot of the racial tensions and poverty and all of that. It's just, it's the way I look at it. And and obviously the world kind of really in the last, because I think people had time to really look at it and see what's happening, we've really taken by storm. And this summer was my first time. I'd never been really protested before, maybe once or twice. But so I'm not like a lifelong political activist, but everyone here involved, I know in their own way, has done different forms of activism. I know that Santiago does homeless outreach, Izzy does canvases for justice reform, and Roger played fucking Huey Newton, and Rodney King on Netflix and for Stars. So like, I think some of the people just bring that because that's who they are, and I'm lucky to have those people around me in the film to create that atmosphere. But this is nothing new. We have a really messed up criminal justice system here. Our police system here is absolutely trash in this country. It needs to be totally reconstructed. I've seen that firsthand this summer in my own eyes and documented it. And I just think that now people are having, maybe this pandemic has given people the time to see what's always been there and right in front of them. And I don't think I was like prescient in a way with this film, because I think that's what happens. Like these stories, like Izzy as the parole officer and the way she treats Santiago, I read these stories. I'd never experienced it. I listened. The line she says where she goes, these are people I sent back to jail. These are dead people. Which one do you want to be in? That was a line told to Christian and I when we were talking to a guy who had got out of prison and told us what his parole officer said to him. I didn't make that up. It sounds cliche, but that's what happened to him. So I let these people talk about it because they've been more at it than I am with activism that type of, and taking on these politics. I just kind of, I just try to look at what's going on in front of us, so.
Orson,
Yeah.
I think that's why the film worked, though, is because you didn't set out to make a social commentary. You just told a story about X, and because it was so grounded in truth and reality, it inherently becomes a social justice film. Do you know what I mean? I think if we set out to do it on purpose, sometimes it fires back and it doesn't feel as organic as if you're just trying to get to the bottom of the story and the truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. Like that's what I was talking about a character and getting in his head, totally. No.
But yeah, we talked a lot about parole officers, and I kind of went down the rabbit hole of how much corruption there is in general, just on the parole side. And here is somebody who you want on your side, who should be rooting for you, and just learning about the percentage of recidivism. And I don't know, it opened my eyes to a whole, and actually after we shot the movie, I started working with jail reform in Los Angeles. And because we were about to funnel an obscene amount of money into building a new prison, instead of taking all of that money into building like new schools and art education and into our communities. And we've actually got like 250,000 signatures to put the measure on the ballot for the election, which was a huge win. And it's kind of be the first time in history where kind of the citizens have done that for jail reform in Los Angeles. So, I mean, again, it doesn't take like a whole movement. You can just do small things yourself in your everyday life. And it doesn't have anything to do with like social media or film. You just go, you can canvas, you can help people register to vote. It's not, activism doesn't have to, to me, activism is like an umbrella term. I don't know. It's just like something, you find something that's personal for you, and then you just you do it. I don't know, that probably made sense. But yeah, it blew my mind, like learning about how much corruption there is in the parole system. And I wanted so badly for her to like help and be on his side, because you just expect humanity to be different. And then you realize that, most people are fucking terrible. And so all of her demons and darkness get, poor X get thrown onto X, and then there you have it.
Yeah, I think for me, my sister is actually a journalist. She writes for The Intercept and has had like a long time focus on harsh sentencing and the death penalty and wrongful convictions. So when I got the opportunity, I kind of had you, Orson, and then that resource, and really just wanted to tell the best, I don't know, like the most honest version of this story that I could, because I'd kind of grown up with these issues being discussed in my household. And then we had a conversation, Orson, where you were like, think of this as an immigrant story. My folks are from Bogota. They immigrated to the States in the 70s. And right now there's just a lot of, if I'm being honest, like anti-Latino, anti-immigrant rhetoric being spewed. And you could feel it even then. And it's not that we set out, or I set out to tell a story that was kind of like, I don't know, make a statement about that. But that was definitely in the back of my head. And I don't know, it felt like an opportunity to do something that, I don't know, really mattered to me at the time. And I had never even been the lead of anything or been able to work on anything that I cared about that much. So it just seemed like, hey, let's do the best job that we can with this,
Sorry. I mean, for me, at least, what I found really resonated is that this is an American story. Like, it's not that this movie is very familiar in a way that's very reassuring, because it's just an American success story, but it has all these obstacles that are real obstacles. And I think that you feel that so profoundly when you're watching the movie. And I think that's why, I mean, I know that's why that it had such an impact on me. But you feel so much like these emotional relationships, and this belief as well that if I just do everything correctly, then I will be rewarded by the system, which is clearly not the case in the film, and obviously not in reality either. Doing the right thing and being obedient does not help. Just hits hard.
Doesn't make you president of America, that's for sure.
Well, the system is set up for someone like X to fail. It's not set up for X to thrive. It's set up for him to just go fall face forward. There's nothing in place to help that. And that, it's really, really sad.
Because they make money off it. That's the crazy thing, is like, that's like what is he saying? Like, they're building these prisons, like they make $1 off sending him back to prison. That's fucking corrupt. That's a complete and utter, I couldn't be more disgusted at that. And I don't want to personally, it's why it was fun and beautiful to make this film with people, because like, I don't want to live in a society that honestly gives $1 towards sending someone back to prison. It's completely inhumane. And yeah, like that's why I go back to capitalism, which is this idea that the free market, that if we just let people make money at any cost, somehow it will help the most needy. But that's complete opposite of what we're seeing. And especially with the disparity right now in this country, and even COVID has shown us like so much how, I mean, if you look, there's a great journalistic entity, the Marshall Project, that does work all about prison reform and stories from inside prison. And, I implore people to take a moment and read about some of the conditions going on with COVID in prison. Some of these prisons are 95% of them are infected with COVID. 95% of people, because you're in a prison and there's no ventilation, there's nothing. So it's really even exposed more of these blemishes. And society tells you, yes, you can climb the mountaintop, but maybe it's not all about the climbing the mountaintop. Maybe it's about people at the top of the mountain and all of us meeting in the middle and spreading it around a little bit and kind of moving more towards that. Obviously, that's a little idealistic, but it's yeah. So that's what I think. Success. That's right. The 5 rules of success. Like, what is success? We're taught from a young age. Be successful. Do this. Do that. And it's just, he does mostly everything right. He really tries. He does better than he should, given the circumstance, and it's still in the end, not enough.
It's the art of the deal.
Yeah.
To quote another title. No, and if you saw the pageant the other night, 45 came out and said, "We're here, they're not." And that kind of puts it all in a nutshell. We're here, they're not. They don't deserve to be here. We're here because we deserve to be here. We were born to be here, and we will die here, and they will die out there. That's a self-indictment par excellence, and I think part of what Orson and my beautifully talented and committed colleagues here on screen have articulated so well. I think that when one is doing so-called political work, one doesn't necessarily have to be political. The first rule is that one must be human. One must commit to one's own sense of humanity and find the frailty and the madness within that humanity, but embrace it as such. And, this is, I think, the challenge of not only this film, but of all of the work that we do. And, the work that we do on stage, on screen, is simply representative of the work that hopefully we're doing out in the world as citizens. And the first, real challenge of the citizen is to be a good listener, not really to be a monologuist, but to listen. And when things click on screen and on stage, it's because people are listening. When writers are writing truly with humanity, it's because those writers are observing, they're listening, they're walking up and down Hollywood Boulevard, and they're not ignoring the people on the block. They are listening and reaching out and touching, with a mask on, of course.
not touching too much, you know?
Yeah, you know.
But I just want to say something about, because I love Roger. Obviously, we got to work there. But Roger, when I was a kid, I saw randomly one night the Huey P. Newton story. Randomly on Stars. I was like maybe 16, 15 years old, not to age myself. And it had a fucking real effect on me seeing that. So just something like I didn't even know about Huey P. Newton or the Black Panthers or anything of these stories. And it really, in a way, opened me up, this art piece, into exposing myself to some new work and new concepts. So I just want to say, as a fanboy, I love being able to work with this man. I love everyone I work with, but he really, that was something that opened me as a kid up to a whole new world, and showed a guy who was really like an outsider, but a really interesting person in society. And finally, just the other day, Roger, I finally saw Agnes Varda's film on the Black Panthers. And it was amazing to finally see it together. But yeah, I just wanted to take a moment and just say that, like, as a filmmaker, sometimes you get something that is full circle.
Well, I'm glad that we caught up with each other. And it's interesting because, in the 80s, early 90s, I was part of a group here in LA called Artists Against Apartheid. And, I did a piece on Frederick Douglass as well. And when we did it in New York City at La Mama, it was in February 1990. And the closing night was the night that Nelson Mandela walked out of Robben Island, right? And transformed South Africa forever. So to be, in collaboration with you and with your parents is, for me, a tremendously radical, transformative experience. And, it's something that I think means a lot to be in collaboration with you, the next generation South African American auteur who's coming on strong with some great work and lots more ahead. Amandla Awetu. Yeah.
My mom or dad are from Cape Town and my mom and Roger obviously had a great chemistry in Queen, and there's a lot, they left because they didn't want to be part of apartheid South Africa. And yeah. So,
Yeah. So it's a tremendous international collaborative, revolutionary, radical, collaborative experience with lots more to go. How's your mom doing? You said she had hip replacement.
She had a little surgery, but she's good. I think she's watching right now. I sent her the link, so if she got technology to work, she's watching. She's good. I was with her today. I've been hanging with her. So
all right. Kisses virtual.
Yeah, love to you as well.
Right.
She wanted me to let you know.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask some of the questions that I received from the audience. I got a few. So question from Savannah. Amazing movie. I find it so interesting that you mentioned that the film was a collaborative production with cast and crew. Could you expand a little bit more on some of the ideas that were brought into the film and maybe added and changed from the original script?
Oh, I mean, we improv'd a lot. Like, we played, like, all of us. Like, there were ideas that I had, and like sometimes they wouldn't work. Roger's character originally was written as more bombastic, kind of flashy character, and he called me and he said, I want to play him more like an art dealer, like a galleryist. I can't remember the guy's name at LACMA, but that was I can't remember his name, but you called and told me his the chief curator there. But
Deutsch?
What?
Deutsch? No.
No, not Deutsch. No. What? Yeah, so Roger brought it. So he was like, I want to do this. And then, that's just one. And then suddenly he was South African. And then, he changed his accent. But everyone was kind of bringing this, it's hard to specific, this whole vibe of how we were going to play the character. Like, like Izzy at times was like, I had scenes that I'd written very harsh, and she was like, I want to play him more loving and then kind of turn on him, you know? So it wasn't so like that she really cared in this way, like the scene where they're outside in the rain, you know, on the pier. Like that one basically became, there was a lot of chunky dialogue. It just wasn't working. And we kind of found this rhythm to it by taking it away. Cause she was like, I wouldn't, there was like this whole monologue she did. And she was like, I'm not going to say this monologue. Like this doesn't work. This isn't the reality of the character. And yes.
Michael Govan.
That's who it was.
Yeah.
He said, I want to be. So we got him a suit and all of that. And so there was a lot. And then everyone, you know, even our crew around us, there's a stuff was being written as we were shooting and you know, I don't know. It's just everyone had their ideas. I just wanted to play. I didn't want to feel like, I mean, personally, like I didn't want to be like the fucking boss, man. Like I don't like that. I want to, because I worked on every side of this film set. Like just wanted to collaborate and dance kind of together and improv. I don't know, maybe I'll let them talk more about it, but yeah.
I feel like also though our sets were very, we almost had to work around our sets, right? Because we were such a small crew and we had these very real sets, and I feel like we were kind of writing around our sets and what was working in the shot setups, and a lot of it was just kind of on the day. I remember even that beach scene, we worked that whole scene and figured out like where to shoot it and how and what to say, and it all was like within a matter of 1 hour. I feel like we got that done, and then it started raining and we're like, I think we got it, let's go. Yeah. And it's actually one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie.
Yep.
Yeah, I've one thing that one of my favorite moments in the whole film is when he comes in, X comes into his apartment and Izzy's there and she's sitting there with the cup on her leg for him to pee in. And that was just like, she just did that. Like, I was like, oh my God, that is that is nasty. And like, she just sits there and she was like, there was a lot of dialogue. And instead it was like, let's play it quiet. Like, let's just.
That's right. I think I was like, I love what you wrote, but I'm going to say nothing.
Totally. Which is beautiful because those pauses are where the real tension is.
Right. But yeah, it was very, like I said, collaborative, and we just kind of improv'd our way through figuring it out.
And then obviously obviously Jonathan Howard, who
oh yeah,
our co-star and amazing. He and I had done a film already together, and we had improv. We had improv a lot in that last movie. So when I brought him into the fold with Santiago, and they're kind of like buddies, as Danny, they really went. I mean, they just did their thing. They really like a lot of that writing, a lot of that characters were those two just doing their own thing, and me just doing my best to not to frame it properly.
Yeah, he was really generous. Like everyone was, but I remember like the first day we worked together, he's like, hey, do you want to ride home? And then he drove me back to Hollywood, and I was like, oh, this guy is just the homie. Like it's really easy talking to him. And he was just very open to, I don't know, just trying things. He would take a lot of risks, and like, I think that fluidity, that play or that sense of play kind of carried over to the rest of the shoot. And we kind of found it as we went, we weren't married to a script, or you didn't have like an idea that you needed to get kind of delivered on the day, I feel like.
No, not at all. And everyone, I really like watching people play, and I got lucky with this and my other films to have a cast that can. I don't necessarily think if I didn't have that, but I lucked out, and everyone is people that I trust more than I would almost trust myself with their characters. So yeah, so a lot of it was that improv and that collaboration and just allowing, and that people to do their thing. I mean, the one scene where Santiago has to go attack the guy outside and it's all flashing. That's Harry. He was like my second AD PA, just, right-hand man as well. Like, and we just wrote that for the film. And we were like, yo, Harry, you want to play the part? Because like Harry is the part. He has freaking 007 tattooed on his arm. He's like, he's just my guy for that. And we just made this role and we did it. And it works, it just, it's nice. I really lucked out with like a great group of people that were willing to experiment. So yeah.
Okay, so another comment question. Eric Mendoza asks, absolutely floored. I think you've all captured such a unique intersection of anger and hope and optimism and agony of people trying to get out from under the heel of the prison system. I wanted to ask about your really striking aesthetic choices. So many moments where long, calm stretches draw us in, and then we're absolutely blasted with visual intensity. Can you speak to some of these choices came about in shooting and editing, or any inspirations?
LSD.
LSD?
No. I mean, partly, but no, a lot of it was just, I mean, it's just, that's my approach. I don't know. It's weird. It's like, some of it's just like, you got no money, you better, you better do something fun and different. If you can get away with it. Also, like, actually, that's how I felt it was inside his head. That, that's how I wanted to show how I had that kind of psychosis and that feeling in his head. And that was my way of doing it without going too far into kind of a visual delirium, and so yeah, like just kind of finding interesting aesthetics, interesting ways to kind of show X's reaction to reality, and just playing with it. I kind of came up doing a lot of really, really low budget videos. Like I would do anything for years and still do. Just because, so kind of taking some of the tools I learned from that and applying that to as a simple way to get into the psyche of a character who's very isolatory but also steadfast and reacting to America. Those were the tools that I used. And then obviously there's a lot of influences like Darren Aronofsky and Gaspar Noé and Refn and those kind of filmmakers that I think really capture that energy. Like in the Pusher series was a really big influence for me in this, and Santiago's Pusher too. All of Gaspar Noé's films, and that just, I don't know, just trying to zig where some people zag, because we could.
So I also, we're going to probably have to finish this up soon. It's quite late on the East Coast and it's a Tuesday, but it's been a pleasure so far. Someone asks, this film is pretty dark, I think in terms of tone. How do you manage to keep things lighthearted on set?
Was it light? I don't know.
If you did.
It was pretty fun.
Even though like the material is dark, it never felt dark. I don't know. I've been on a lot of really like fucked up dark shit shows, like, and movies, and it's almost inherently like if your director is not dark, it trickles down. Like there's no, I don't know. It never felt dark for me once. But I think that's just Orson, like keeping the tone light.
Yeah, Orson's a lot of fun. Like he's a really fun-loving guy, and like he is exploring some darker themes, and we had to go to some heavier places to tell the story. But like the energy on set was actually, I don't know, there was a lot of, it felt like similar to doing black box theater. Like it felt like an ensemble, and like there was a sense of tribe, and a lot of the time we were having fun. And also because you're working within such a small budget, I don't know, you're just kind of like making it work, and there's a sense of community and like, all right, like we all just have to give 100% and we'll figure this thing out.
There's also like no time to get moody, right? Like you have Orson's writing, directing, lighting, fucking rewriting, shooting, making costumes. Like it was just, you don't have time when you're working on such like a small scale. You kind of have to like work as a unit, and everybody's has to be in a good mood, and that's the only way I feel like film can happen, is when everybody kind of works as a unit.
That's great. I mean, the thing is like for me, it's like I always feel like when you watch a great film, like almost every single time when you talk to the people who were involved, they generally speak of the experience the way you guys are, that you went in it with so much love, and then that is what translates. Like it's that magical, imperceptible thing that you can't really quantify. So it's really cool to hear you here say like and explain that in detail. I mean, I'm not sure if I have any other questions from the audience that haven't been fully covered. I mean, for you guys watching the film or revisiting it now, this will be the last question. What do you hope its journey is going to be, whether that's the future that it will have or the relationship that the audience will have with the movie?
I mean, for me, like I like cult films, so like I hope that this film has a life. Maybe not a grandiose one, whatever it is. I just hope that it lives as some part of culture in some niche, but that it finds a nice little audience of small group of people that that like it and are interested in it and share it. And me, like the only goal I really have in the end is I just want like an incitement to discourse and for people. Hopefully it brings up some good conversations afterwards, maybe, and it exposes you to some more people on the fringes of society that not necessarily we spend too much time shining a spotlight on. So that's kind of it to me. Like I want, you know, you want the world for it, but in all reality, I want it to be like the films that I love, which are just films that I like to revisit and talk about and have conversations with and see how they change over time. And I hope it finds a small community along the way, like that, or a big community, you know, but any community. And that's it. Like I love cult cinema. Like I said, like that's stuff I grew up on. When I was 18 years old, my mom gave me from the dollar store like a stack of Roger Corman films. And I still have a bunch of them, like Bat Out of Hell and Fast and Furious and all this stuff. And I love that stuff. And so I hope that this finds a little community, and I hope, you know, people have some good conversation about it and pay a little more attention. And also, just one thing, and I hope if you want, donate to the Innocence Project. They help get people out of prison and help people who are wrongly convicted finally get the sentence remanded. So it's really important. And the Marshall Project, who does journalism on incarcerated folks.
That's great. I'd like to thank everyone again. This has been such a pleasure, and I feel so blessed to be able to share this film with you guys and to share it with an audience, because again, I found it so moving and so hard hitting and touching, and that I would be surprised if it doesn't find a cult audience, just because of the reactions I've heard as well. The people who it connects with, it's like electricity, and that is, you can't calculate that. I'd like to thank you all. I don't know if anyone has anything left they would like to add or say that hasn't been said. I'm happy to give you a platform to do that. And if not, I guess we're gonna end for the night. And again, I just want to thank everybody. It's just like so fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you for being so supportive of our movie.
Yeah, thanks for having me and supporting.
Thank you. Merci. Merci.
Merci. Yeah. Thank you. Merci. Bonne soirée. Bon cinéma tout le monde.
Thank you.
Have a great night, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.